to this episode of the Print Softcover. It's an online platform where we release non-fiction books. And today's book is very special, not just because I love films and books, but because this book has brought together these two favorite areas of mine. And also, it has brought this person who unfortunately, a lot of new generation might actually not know about. But I am glad that I have watched his films growing up. And Anirudha Bhattacharjee, welcome, sir.
Anirudh.
Sir has actually done it before it became the rage. He was in IIT Kharagpur, and then he decided to pursue his love for films. And he's also written two previous books, and two of his books which have won not just critical acclaim but also awards. And professionally, he has worked at IBM. And right now, you're with. I'm sorry, I'm a bit confused. I think the note did not explain where exactly you're working right now.
Okay. I was with a number of organizations,
Okay.
which included IBM, Pricewaterhouse,
Okay.
and last year I retired from Wipro,
Okay.
and right now I am working in a small organization. It's a SAP partner. It's
Okay.
named Diligent.
Okay. So coming back, so I am actually taking off the cover of this book that I want everybody to also see. So this is like a very, very colorful cover as well, I think, which sort of sets the tone for what is to come. So it is a biography on Basu Chatterjee. So tell us, for our audience, you have written on R.D. Burman before, and you also have, Gata. You've also written Gata Rahe Mera Dil. So why Basu Chatterjee?
I have written on R.D. Burman.
Hmm.
I have written Gata Rahe Mera Dil. I have written the biography of SD.
Hmm.
And recently, my book on Kishore Kumar also came out, and that's a bestseller. Okay, so I can stake my claim to be the only human being on this universe who have written the comprehensive biographies of the Troika, S.T., R.D., Kishore.
Hmm.
So I can stake my claim to that. Now, why Basu Chatterjee? That's an interesting question because all my subjects previously have been in or uh, around the subject of music.
Hmm.
Yeah. Now, I actually grew up watching a lot of his films. Secondly, his films made me laugh a lot, smile a lot, without being slapstick.
Hmm.
It's
Right.
not that somebody is slapping somebody and he falls down like in a circus. It was not like that. And it was the humor, it was subtle, it was soft, and it was the type of humor we Bengalis like. I do not know, but not the hardcore like North Indian Punjabi type of very uh, like not wit exactly, like humor which could be enjoyed by everyone in the family, including the elderly and the kids. So to cut a long story short, he gave me a lot of happiness in my childhood.
Hmm.
Secondly, I liked the type of films he made, the type of films made by Rishikesh Mukherjee, by Gulzar, and of course Basuda. Now, I also wanted to write on Rishikesh Mukherjee, but I found that there was a lot of literature on him. And Gulzar, everyone nowadays like, writes a book on Gulzar. So I am I was not sure value add.
Hmm.
And incidentally, I found that there was nothing on that. I thought, "Arey, then why don't I write one?" That's the reason.
Okay. So because for me as well, I think as you mentioned, it was his films is so much of a family experience that I remember watching one of my first Basu Chatterjee films, Khatta Meetha, with my family on a Sunday afternoon, I think on Doordarshan, if I'm not wrong. And I was very young, but I remember like the fun that you said, the funny and fun. And I'm also probably from further east, so probably I do understand what you're trying to say. That sort of humor, which is not loud, but it is still funny. It's very homely. There's a sense that makes you laugh, but also, evokes that sense of that you can watch it with everybody. So, and then of course, I remember as I think a teenager, I ended up watching Piya Ka Ghar, and I found it very compelling because probably I think when I eventually came to Delhi, I could understand where she was struggling because I had grown up in a much bigger space. And then suddenly I could understand like matchbox like houses and what she was going through. I think later in life, I felt that when I moved to a city like Delhi, where you could like literally hear and see people, the next door neighbors that you don't know, but you can hear them all the time. It was very unreal for me. But actually, I was wondering though that I wouldn't even say my generation, but the people who are coming up, I wonder, would you think that his films, what is I would say the value of his films beyond nostalgia? Because yes, there is an element of nostalgia. Whoever will watch it now will be nostalgic. If you watch it, I watch it, it'll be nostalgic. But what do you think is the value addition that somebody should also pick up from watching his films, especially for a newer generation?
See, this is difficult to understand, to answer, because I really do not know the newer generation except uh, for being co-workers,
Hmm.
and I do not know the type of films they normally see.
Hmm.
But I have sons, and both my sons, when young, used to see Khatta Meetha,
Hmm.
as you said, Khatta Meetha. They used to see Khatta Meetha a lot and roll on laughing. I think obviously some value add for the next generation as well. Like why else would they see the films? That is number one from what I have observed within my family itself. Next is his stories were very universal in nature, right? Uh, Maybe the teenager might not identify with the same right now, but say somebody who's above in his or especially in her 20s, I'm sure would identify with a film like your Sara Akash. Have you seen Sara Akash? With Sara Akash or with Rajnigandha or
Hmm.
with Chikchor or with and and छोटी सी बात है देखो, it was a vacuous comedy, so everyone laughs. Also with films like Swami or Apne Paraye, again Chameli ki Shadi, you keep on laughing and laughing and laughing throughout. Right? So yes, the appeal for the next generation is always there.
Hmm.
See, I'm nobody to judge, but I will give you an example. The uh, I was talking to India
Hmm.
Swami, the actress. So she told me that I'm so happy
Hmm.
that three films of mine are very famous on OTT channel. I asked her, what are the films you are talking about? And she said, Golmaal. But Golmaal, is by Rishikesh Mukherjee. It's a hardcore comedy,
Yeah.
uh, somewhat slapstick, but a very intelligent comedy.
Mhm.
Actually, one is Khatta Meetha. She mentioned Khatta Meetha. And one is Shan. Shan is a complete commercial stuff.
Yes. Yes.
You have superstars fighting. So that has a different set of viewership, right? Mostly men, right? Uh, but yes, Katamita is still there. You check the OTT channels, you'll still find Diya Ka Ghar, you'll still find Choti Siva, you'll still find Chicho, you'll still find Shauki. Is somebody doing a film like Shauki? Have you seen Shauki?
No, shocking. I haven't seen.
You must see Shauki.
Okay.
He like challenged the myth that old men are the holy uh, type, always doing Ram Nam and all. No, old men do ogle at girls. So like, that's a fact of life. Take it and move on. And it's so funny. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. And again, the humor is soft. It's not something right out of Punjab. It's a very Bengali kind of humor. It's soft, sentimental. So I have uh, mentioned in my book that films which are well made
Mhm.
have a shelf life which is quite long. So I sternly believe that the films of Basuda, though made some 50 years ago, still have a shelf life. And that is the reason they are still seen by a multitude of viewers throughout the country. I believe throughout the world. He has a following in the Indian diaspora in UK, USA, Australia, everywhere.
Okay.
And see, you're also interested to know,
Hmm.
right? You're quite young, right? And somebody is writing about films he made 50 years ago, and that is still being discussed. And he was not a typical commercial
Yeah.
director like
Hmm.
Mehboob Khan, Raj Kapoor, or Yash Chopra. He's showing your romancing in Switzerland, or jumping around in Netherlands, nothing like that. Simple next door neighbors, right, falling in love, and then funny stories around them. So when you see his films, you realize that, well, this is something which could have happened to me also. And there are cases like, where these happen. There are some very nice use of dialogues also. Uh, you're quite young, so you might not know. You might have grown up with a cell phone. Now, when there was no mobile phone,
Hmm.
how would somebody want to start a conversation? Suppose a boy likes a girl, he would like to, and he meets her in a bus stand, and he wants to start a conversation.
Yeah.
What would you normally say? Do you know?
I am honestly reminded of a very Assamese thing right now because we still joke about it. Like what you mentioned, if there's a particular context, I think back in my land, it's usually have you had your food? For some reason, that's like a way of starting a conversation till date.
Okay. And another uh, thing is say that you are there, you are a beautiful girl. I am there.
Mhm.
I'm younger, right? I want to talk to you, right? And it is the 1970s
Right.
or the 80s. I don't know how to approach you. Standing in front of me, I'll ask, what is the time?
Yeah, I sort of thought usually because it's also everybody's wearing or not wearing actually a watch because watch is
Yes,
a
I
luxury.
don't have a watch. Yes, I
Yes.
don't have a watch. You have a watch, right? टाइम क्या हुआ अभी तक बस नहीं आया so,
Yeah.
Basuda would use exactly such dialogues and we could immediately relate. Arey, I used to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not somebody fighting 25 people.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, I get it. Yes, I remember. I think one of the scenes as well where um, Amol Palekar is being taught how to approach. Um, it is that. It is exactly that when he's asking about the time and the bus stand. I mean, I had a whole visual the moment you said it. I think I had a whole visual of that movie sort of run past where he's trying to approach her and he's being taught by the smarter guy how to approach women. So yes, I mean, and yes, and now I mean your answer yes is very on point because even now ultimately like you said because it's so universal and I'm reminded of Shakespeare as well why he still remains universal because human nature doesn't really change. The
Exactly.
needs for that same scenario till date in an OTT show. So it's the same thing. How to approach a girl has not really. It's a question that is evergreen. I think it'll never go out of fashion. And
Basic emotions
right.
remain more or less the same. To evolve into something radically different, it will take a lot of time.
Hmm.
Maybe 10,000 years. God knows what will happen then, right?
Right. So my next question, it's mostly for the audience. What I mean is the next question I want to know how important, because you've written about it, so I want to know from you that how these cities of Bombay and Calcutta actually also played a role in his films, like in terms of spaces. Because the Bombay we see now, and you've mentioned as well, like the Bombay we are used to seeing is a very stereotypical Bombay. For somebody, for example, my first visit to Bombay was actually last year, finally. But my understanding of the city, the moment I landed, was from films. I was imagining Bombay in a certain way because that's what I have seen, at least in Bollywood films, right? Or actually, when I first visited Kolkata 3, 4 years ago, again for the first time, it was the same thing. The moment I got off the station, my imagining Kolkata was through again films. And that is how, reading the book made me realize that how it's visions of filmmakers that make common people who may never travel to a lot of places imagine cities. So I want to hear from you, like the relationship that he shared with these two spaces.
See, uh, number one, like Basuda, he came from a small town.
Right.
He came from Mathura.
Hmm.
He could not complete his graduation uh,
Hmm.
due to financial constraints. They, as I've already mentioned in the book, and he had to move to Bombay to do a job and support his family.
Hmm.
His father had retired, and then his father also passed away. And suddenly he was the eldest young man in a joint family. So Vasuda struggled out. Right? Initially, he used to stay in a shack in Kolaba, and then he moved to a suburb, Borivali. Used to take a local train, travel to Churchgate. He told me it used to take me 1 hour 5 minutes. I used to get down at Churchgate and walk down
Hmm.
to my office. So for him, Bombay was never the city of skyscrapers, of Arabian Sea, uh, etc., etc. For him, Bombay was the city of middle class, or rather lower middle class people with a lot of aspirations.
Hmm.
Basuda wanted to crack the civil services, but
Hmm.
unfortunately, he could not complete his graduation. So his aspirations had to be channelized into something else, and we are thankful that he did not become a civil servant, else he might have become the district magistrate of Bolivia and do
Yeah.
something else. He would have no clue. And so he made films. And his films depicted people who also struggled in Bombay. Right? If you see the film Choti Chi Baat, there is not a single shot of the Arabian Sea. We don't see fancy skyscrapers and all. No, we don't see luxurious cars and all. We see the officers and clerks traveling mostly uh, in trains or buses, standing in a queue and getting up the lift and going to their desks.
Hmm.
So that is Basuda's Bombay. It is more about how like he felt about himself alienated in a big city. The small town, like Mathura had, I think, only two, three cinema halls. So obviously, it must have been a very small town, right? And Mumbai, I think, had around 50 cinema halls. There is no comparison at all. So again, say for the film, your Piya Ka Ghar, just a minute. There we see that the hero stays in a job, but intrinsically, the entire family is very happy, right? The lady of the house, she mentions that 28-29 साल हो गए यहीं पर, अब तो गांव भी याद नहीं आता. That you follow Hindi, na?
Mhm. I do. Yes, sir.
So that has a deeper subtext in the sense that uh, she is from a village, number one, something like Masuda himself,
Mhm.
but she has adjusted to the city, also adjusted to the fact that she has been living in a chawl for so many years. And thirdly, it also shows that that financially the family has not evolved into a super rich family, unlike the Amitabh Bachchan's say in Diwar. Uh, he's a longshore man. He's a dock worker. He suddenly becomes very rich, right? So it is nothing of that sort, and it's very true to life. That is actually the soul of Bombay. And thirdly, she is happy. She is not the complaining type. I've been staying in this chawl for so many years. No, she has adjusted herself to the fact that even when we are staying in a chawl, we can still. So that is Basuda's Bombay. And um, in real life, he was very grounded. Like he was not a lavish spender, like wearing uh, imported survival suits, etc. A simple shirt, a simple your bell-bottom pant, uh, which might have been 30 years old, something like that. That was uh, Basu Chatterjee, and he did try to depict himself in more than one way in his films, and that includes the Jolin, your what's that? Yeah, the clerk uh, in Choti Si Baat, or the uh, Thadki Buddha, like in Shaukin. Yeah, shoot.
Um, just one second. So I want to know, because you've spoken extensively with him and interviewed him, and you interviewed, of course, a lot of other people, which is also part of the book's acknowledgement. So what was that experience like? Because you, I mean, as part of you've written already books on these maestros of Hindi cinema. But I feel like, or maybe it's something that I want to know on a personal level as well, because when you admire somebody in the form of that, you look at his films or songs or whatever it is, there's also a tendency of being a fan first and then to become sort of like a biographer of that person, of course. So what was that journey like for you? Because I'm sure that if I had to go and speak, I would first be so completely blown away with the presence of this person whose stories I've grown up laughing, reading, enjoying for years and years. So, what was the journey like?
You're very right. Obviously, I'm a fan. Uh, else, like, why would I write on it?
Mm.
But like, there's a difference between being a fan
Mm.
and being a blind fan.
Right.
I'm a big fan of this, but I'm not a blind fan. So, to read my book, you will find that I have been critical
Mm.
of his
Yes.
films, like, where it matters. Right? Something I noticed very strongly is that Vasuda's film had multiple continuity issues. Say, an excellent film like Rajnikantha. you see the film very carefully, you'll find when Vidya Sinha travels from Delhi to Bombay, she is wearing one sari. When she gets down, she's wearing another. Similarly, when she returns, she is wearing one sari. When she gets down, uh, so like that's something you should have checked, right?
Right.
Uh, there are many more. Say, for example, to see the film Priyatama. The film starts with a song with Neetu Singh in the rain. She is wearing a stole. Understand? Stole.
Yeah, yeah.
And then she uh, gets on a taxi. And when she comes out from the taxi, the stole is missing. So that's another. Uh, there are many as such. So regarding this, I wanted to talk to somebody, like, preferably a director. So I talked to Aruna Raji Patil, and she told me that look, Basuda made very nice films, but I feel that he could be very impatient at times. That could be one of the reasons
Hmm.
that these uh, continuity lapses were there. Secondly, uh, in the olden days, there used to be a continuity girl, never a continuity boy. Maybe because the girls are uh, much more detailed in their observation. Like, I know because I am married, so my like, when my wife wears a sari, she'll say ব্লাউজের রংটা ম্যাচ হচ্ছে না কেন হচ্ছে না হেভি গ্রিনে বলছে no 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 there's a difference. So for me green is green, blue is blue. I cannot demarcate between the same, yeah, between the two. But like I think this is something biological and genetic that the girls or like women are much more detailed in their observations. And Vasuda, he was somebody who would refuse to waste footage. If somebody said, Vasuda, the continuity mistake, have you seen Swami?
No, I have not seen so.
Must see Swami. It's a wonderful. So, Swami is a story by Sarat Chandra Chatterjee. Okay. Uh, the story dates back to the 1920s.
Hmm.
But after seeing the film, you cannot make out the decade because Vikram is wearing bell bottoms, which is 1970s. Bell bottoms and thick belts, which is essentially the mid 1970s. The price of gold seems like the early 70s. The make of the car is a Mustang convertible, and that's a 1965 version. The alarm clocks, uh, are of the 60s or the 70s. So it's also hodgepodge. So uh, I can assume that he uh, kept the story the same, just brought it forward by 50 years. That is fine. But Vikram, the actor who was also helping in production, like, he told me something that for the last scene he had ordered a coal engine, you know, na?
Cool engine,
For
yes.
yeah, diesel and your electric locomotives. He had coal engines. You might not have seen them, right? He had ordered a coal engine, and by mistake, the railway authorities they had sent a diesel engine. He wanted it to go back, but Vasuda said, "Chhod do." Again, we'll have to shoot. The financiers will lose money. But had I been in his shoes, I would have said no. You technically coal engine, but Basuda was like that. He did not want to like, waste footage. And one more thing, he was a content based director. So once he felt that the story moves you, he would not concentrate that much on stray things like your continuity or loss of logic. But but I must say uh, that his technical knowledge of cinema was very strong, and he wanted to use the uh, finest technicians, like his cameraman, like mostly of the 70s, it was K.K. Mahajan, who was a master, and for some time AKB, who was also a master. His sound record used in the 70s, it was Narinder Singh. K.K. Mahajan, Narinder Singh, and AKB all were gold medalists of FTIR. His initially his art director was Yadav Bhattacharjee, and from his second film it was a Bansi Chandragupta. Bansi Chandragupta, you would know, he was Satyajit Ray's
Hmm.
art director also. So he worked with the finest of technicians, and that is uh, another reason why his films have a very clean look and feel. Like it's free of clutter.
Hmm.
The sets are realistic. The photography, it is nothing showy. It is. It seems that it is happening in front of your eyes, right? And even the sound quality, even still now, it is crystal clear.
So thank you. I think if I had the option, I think this would be an endless conversation because it's very fascinating to hear. I mean, of course, it's fascinating to read, but it's also very fascinating to hear from somebody who's also watched his films and spoken to him and spoken to so many other people about these films. So again, for those who've missed, I'm holding it up again. It's called Basu Chatterjee and Middle of the Road Cinema. It's by Anirudha Bhattacharjee sir, and it's an amazing book if you are invested in Hindi films if you are invested in learning more about films from 70s, from 60s. And I think this, and also because it has very interesting snippets, it has very interesting anecdotes about not just a man, but his movies. And I know that there are a lot of people who still want to know more about middle of the road cinema, and I would definitely recommend this book to them. And it's been published by Penguin, and I'm a fan purely because I've been showing it off at least, and I think I especially love the font. I think it's just so well done in terms of the cover. It has the look and feel like you. It feels like yes, this is going to be a book that I want to sit and time will pause in a way, and I can go back to that zone when Basu Chatterjee was making his films and the kind of world he created for whoever would watch his films then and even now. Like you've already mentioned it, there is a timelessness, and yet there is also a rootedness about his films, which is what I think make them so unique. Thank you so much, sir, for talking to us today. It has been wonderful.
My pleasure.